Today's video was sponsored by Pop Culture Zone Pressing Services. If you need your comic books pressed, I personally vouch for Pop Culture Zone as being one of the best professional companies in the game, offering hands down the lowest prices out there. Services start at only $9.99, and every order placed will receive free fast track turnaround times. Even though I press comics for my personal collection, whenever I need a professional press for my key comics, I send them off to Pop Culture Zone, and every single book that I've received back, every single one, has had results that have exceeded my expectations, and I am sure that they will exceed your expectations as well. Make sure you go check the link in the description below to head over to their website, popculturezone.com, for complete details on services and how to begin your order. Let's bring up the first chapter of tonight, and that's going to go by the title of Ruining the Hobby. This is one thing that is just, to me, making comic books in this hobby not fun anymore. I am sick and tired of everyone saying this is ruining the hobby. Now, here's what nobody talks about. When it comes to this ideology or this rhetoric of this is ruining the hobby, there's two sides to it, guys. There's two sides. There's the FOMO, and then there's the gatekeepers. All right? And these two kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum here butt heads, because you have the FOMO, which breeds, and believe me, now I do believe that there are negligence or detriments to this hobby, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to affect me or you personally, or that it's going to destroy the hobby or ruin anything. And it's okay, and it's good sometimes to talk about these things. I always say this: it's okay to talk about the negative as long as you do it in a productive manner, searching for answers, you know, being rational and respectful, and debating things in a way to where we can argue different points of views in a matter to where we can learn and grow, right? But so often in this hobby, do both sides of these. It's irrational, it's emotional, and there's no proof or fact or any basis for any of these claims and arguments. So you got the FOMO, that within the FOMO, you got people fighting each other, you know, but then you have the gatekeepers. And I talked about this a lot. The gatekeepers are, in my humble opinion, almost as bad, or sometimes just as bad or worse than people that are buying in succumbing to the FOMO. So now let's look at the FOMO and how do the people that get caught up in FOMO say something's ruining the hobby? You will get people that are caught up in the FOMO saying something's ruining the hobby when they don't get their way. And I see this quite often, and that's when you get the excuses that are made by these people, and they hide behind something. So you get the excuse of flippers and speculators ruining the hobby. This comes from the FOMO crowd. Why are they blaming speculators and flippers for ruining the hobby? Well, because they got caught up on their FOMO and they missed out. So it's the fear of missing out, right? And what's the aftermath of missing out? MOMO. First there's FOMO, and then there's MOMO, all right? Trademark it. And can't nobody else use that. No, I'm just kidding. Go use it. Go spread the word. MOMO is almost more toxic than the FOMO. What's MOMO? Mad of missing out, or mad on missing out. First the FOMO, because you got the fear of not wanting to miss out, but then you miss out and now you're goddamn mad, right? And what does this do? This drives emotion, and it drives this reactionary rhetoric of, well, I got to blame somebody other than myself. You know, they use the thing, well, I just wanted one copy. I just like the character. Well, if you like the character so much, then why weren't you there on New Comic Book Wednesday? Why weren't you at your shop before Comic Book Wednesday letting your LCS know that you want this on your pull list? Why weren't you on countless websites like mycomicshop.com or Midtown, even though I don't use them anymore? Why weren't you on these websites buying them for 35% off cover price with your pre-sales. I'm not going to beat this. I've been saying this for years now, guys. You guys know it if you watch my channel. That's the MOMO. All right. Movies aren't helping much lately. Yeah, we could talk. Yeah, movies aren't helping the FOMO, and I get that. That's a whole other show right now. I'm not going to get in that. We all know how that is, but I've had families come in to try to buy stuff when I only allow one per customer. You know, and that's great. And I've talked about this too, about the one per customer thing too. Hey, you don't need to do one per customer, but that will help out. That will help spread the love. But yeah, I mean, if you have families coming in, if a dad's coming in bringing his kids and brothers and sisters and cousins and grandpa, like, whatever. I mean, what can you do about that? But still, if somebody wants it, you can't blame other people. You got to get it yourself. Nobody is ruining the hobby for you. Now, can you look at it and say, well, damn, like from an ethical standpoint, I don't like people that go and, go to an LCS on New Comic Book Wednesday, grab every copy off the shelf, only with the intent to put them up on eBay for 5 times as much. I get it. Now, do I think that's ethical? No. But is there a law against it? No. Can LCS owners limit per customer, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. So again, it's like, hey, free country, right? I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's ethical. Save some for other people. Pre-order it. And when you do your pre-orders, you can order as many as you want without feeling like you're, taking every book off the shelf, right? But again, bottom line, I can think this is ethical. I can think this isn't ethical. But at the end of the day, you can't blame anybody. So I advise people that get caught up in the FOMO, don't make excuses. Don't make excuses. Own your crap. Own it. Do your due diligence. Study. Read your previews mags. They cost they're free. And even if you order them online, you can get them online for mycomicshop.com for 15 cents. They do charge you 15 cents. Probably like a processing fee. Whatever. Don't blame anybody, guys. That's the FOMO side of it's ruining the hobby. They're ruining the hobby. Then there's the gatekeepers. All right. Now, I do believe that some of the gatekeepers do have good intentions. But I do believe that a lot of the gatekeepers don't have good intentions, and it's a facade. Now, I do believe that some of the gatekeepers actually start out with good intentions, and then they realize that there is basically a groupthink mob mentality that aligns with this gatekeeping ideology and rhetoric as well. And they're like, well, shoot, so-and-so comic this and comic that can make YouTube channels like, pushing books and doing this. Well, and they could get subscribers and stuff doing that. Well, I could get followers and everything being a gatekeeper and using this facade of, I actually care about the hobby. So I recently saw a post. I'm not going to say no names. I would actually, I actually thought about inviting this individual to join the show, but I only thought about it like right before the show started. And I don't know this individual like that, but I would love to maybe reach out to this individual and talk to him sometime and bring him on the show. Not going to say names right now. That's right, James. I saw that. You're right. Most aren't. But there's an individual that I follow on Instagram. I see his posts quite often, and he uses humor to kind of talk crap about FOMO. And most of it, I think it's funny as hell because I agree. Even though I don't believe in saying anything ruins the hobby or pointing fingers at anybody, I agree that FOMO is troubling, especially over the last year plus. Even with the downturn of the market, FOMO is troubling, and it's scary at times. And I actually did a live stream sometime last year where I talked about the socio-psychological conditionings of where this comes from. And it's, the me, now, stomp on anybody to get it. It's like people that literally trample other people to get that new pair of Jordans. Literally, people have been trampled on and died. Or like Black Friday, we're literally supposed to be, giving thanks and celebrating family, being together, breaking bread, and all of these important things that really matter in life. But yet we're out trampling other people to get like $25 off a flat screen TV from Walmart. FOMO comes from that same mentality, that same dopamine rush, that same gimme, 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 me, almost narcissistic, personality trait that we accept culturally. So I have a problem with FOMO. I do. So this individual is, making fun of FOMO quite often. And this individual did a post about Spider Boy, because it is funny. Now, who knows what might happen to that character? Talked about that on a recent video. But they said that this comic book belongs in the dollar bin. And I said, no, it doesn't. I disagree. While I agree with your sentiment about it not being a book, actually, I'm going to read you guys. I'm going to read you guys exactly what I said here. I think it would be good to have proper context. This individual was saying that this comic book belongs in the dollar bins, and I say this. I disagree. Any spinoff of arguably the most popular superhero ever, not named Superman, is naturally going to garner some type of demand. The problem, though, is how we view the market and how we react. Instead of reacting in a way that organically drives market value based on supply and demand, we react in an irrational emotional state and push the market value above an organic market equilibrium. Once this happens, a precedent is set for future buyers who now assume that the bloated price is the fair market price. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? I'm talking about the chain reaction or the domino effect that happens here. So again, I say, I don't agree with you that this belongs in the dollar bin. I do believe, comic books, there's inherent value where, there's a new Spider character and, it's going to drive demand. It might drive the value of a comic book up. But how much, though? How much is it naturally going to drive that comic book up when you actually look at what's available out there and how many people want it? Well, I'll tell you what, $30, $40, $50 for the Spider-Man book, the Spider-Boy first appearance, Spider-Man number 7, whatever. I guarantee you right now that value is not organic. It's not sitting at a market equilibrium. A market equilibrium is where the supply base, the market price or the market value meets supply and demand. I guarantee you that's not what's happened. What happened was, as soon as the book started selling, people were in FOMO, so they started overpaying. And once you start overpaying, you set a precedent of future buyers to look at that price, and then they look at that price and say, oh, that must be the fair market value. I'm going to pay that. Or I'm FOMOing out. I might even pay a little more because they don't want to miss out, not knowing that there's plenty of them out there and there's almost practically no way that you can miss out as long as you pay, maybe at this point, a substantial amount above cover price. I don't think this book right now, honestly, if you looked at organic supply and demand and market equilibrium, there's probably no reason that this book should be selling over $10. But when I say no reason, I'm taking emotion out of it. When you add emotion in and when we use emotion making our purchasing decisions, hey, it's a free market. Somebody can pay whatever they want for it, and then it sets that precedent, and the next person's gonna pay whatever they want for it. So that's some context there. The individual responded by saying, well, your comment sounds like you're kind of in agreement with me. And they said that the overhyped FOMO book is insanely overvalued. I think that's an exaggeration. I just talked about how I do believe it can be slightly overvalued. I do. And then they went on to say, books like this are a perfect example of what's wrong with the hobby today. I disagree. And I said, no, it's not. Well, first off, I say, I'm not in agreement with you because you said that the book belongs in the dollar bin, and I don't agree with you about that. But yeah, I think we, have an understanding about FOMO. I think we feel the same similar way about FOMO, and we have our reservations on that. But then I say also, though, I disagree with your statement about books like this being what's wrong for the hobby. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this book. It's people and their reactions that is the problem. How is this book wrong for the hobby? Somebody's writing a comic book, and look, we want to entertain. We want to get creative and pull people in to new characters and new stories. I mean, this idea of carbon copying characters has been around since the 40s. You know, Superboy was introduced only a few years after Superman. Superboy, Superman, Supergirl, Superwoman, Batman, Man Bat, Batgirl, Batwoman. There's nothing new to this. And comic book publishers are in business to make money. And it gets us involved. Oh, who's Spider-Boy? A lot of people just want to know. Might be an exciting new character. There's nothing wrong with this book, and it is not destroying the hobby or hurting the hobby. It's actually keeping the hobby alive. But I could agree if we were to state that, well, it's how people react to books like these. That isn't ruining or destroying the hobby, but that could be a bit of a problem. Do you see what I'm saying there? Because at the end of the day, none of this stuff is ruining or destroying the hobby. All right? I did say it's perfectly fine to disagree, but I would humbly say that it's this type of attitude that is also toxic for the hobby. A comic book publisher making a story about a new character in no way ruins anything unless the story is bad and no one wants to read it. I mean, you want to talk about ruining the hobby, we can't talk about, well, is the story good? If the story's crap, it's like nobody's going to read it. All right? That's another thing. But I go on to say, a comic book publisher making a story about a new character is no way ruining the hobby unless the story, I already said that. To take such an extreme stance is almost just as toxic as those that you say you have a problem with. While I agree that FOMO is a huge problem in this hobby, so is gatekeeping. And people thinking comics can only be one way, then proceed to shame others for enjoying the hobby differently from them, well, that's the problem. With that said, I'm always open to hearing different perspectives delivered in a respectful yet thought-provoking manner. So again, I'm not ridiculing this individual. I'm being completely honest, and I'm just trying to make it extremely clear. None of this is ruining the hobby. And you have two people on both sides that are fighting with each other. They're mad about this. They're mad about that. And the only thing that's ruining the hobby to me is having to hear all of these people bitch and moan all the time without any solution, without any constructive criticism that is pushed forth in a productive manner. Nobody wants to bring that to the table. Kevin, I feel so many just buy on speculation and don't read anything. And that, a lot of people do. I read everything. If I don't like the stories, I stop buying it. That's the true problem. I have no expectations when I buy books. So Kevin, what's the problem? What do you mean? Like, I see that you're telling us this is how I do it. I think other people do it like this. Is there a problem there? I don't think there's a problem there. If you keep doing what you love to do and let other people do what they want to do. But I mean, of course, like I said, I mean, we can dive into the problems of FOMO and, what that means for individuals and how it affects the market. And it can be problematic. But again, is it ruining the hobby for you? I wouldn't even focus on it, and I would move on and just, like I said, do you.